I think a lot of these people would do well to read the Gospels and take those parts of the Gospels and actually apply them literally. But they don't. Yeah. They never, ever talk about Jesus' words, because if they did, they couldn't support the policies they are pushing.
Yeah, the least among us, Jesus says, to look out for. And indeed, the hypocrisy here from so many of these people is readily apparent. So, Congressman, the title of the book is, The Fight to Save Democracy from Christian Nationalism. You've just diagnosed the problem. So if there is a fight, how is it won? What are a few things that can be done to stem the tide?
Yeah, it starts by understanding what we're up against. One of the challenges is that in this country, we're not very good at talking about the intersection of religion and politics. We show a lot of deference. Religious liberty is obviously a core value in this country, but it leaves us potentially vulnerable. There's that apocryphal quote that is attributed to Sinclair Lewis: when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross. And that is exactly why I wanted to write this book. We need a wake-up call. We've got to understand not just the political agenda, but the actual religious beliefs that animate this movement. And then we've got to come together, whether you're a Christian, a non-Christian, or a non-believer, and defend our democracy. There's still time. We can still do it. But this project is much further along than most people realize, and I wanted folks to see what I see and to understand that.
This is the primal scream of a dying regime. Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. Christians not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish, in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Thank you for sticking around for the second hour of the late afternoon, early evening show of the War Room. If I can give you my own review, I think we've been kind of on fire today on Tuesday, the 18th of August in the year of our Lord 2026, all day long. Pasovic and Natalie, and of course Sean Davis just did amazing work this morning, and then we just finished with the Viceroy Mike Davis and Steve Cortez. Want to continue in this thread. We're going to have something very special. We're going to focus more in this hour on the jihadist side of the Marxist jihadist alliance and talk about practicality, particularly in places like the great state of Texas, which is the jewel of the crown. I've got Frank Gaffney's here and Karen Siegemund. We're going to have a presentation we go through. We're also going to be joined later, hopefully by Kimberly Fletcher from Moms for America and Carl Smith, an amazing veteran, former Army that has done just a great job in writing up some of these concepts of democracy in our constitutional republic versus these radicals. Gaffney, I want to start with you, particularly Morning Joe today. This congressman from California has got a new book about Christian nationalism. And Joe Scarborough, which I cut out, so I didn't want to make you guys, and I certainly didn't want the audience to have to force to listen to it again. Joe Scarborough, or Father Joe Scarborough, goes through a long litany in the Gospel of St. Matthew about the other. First off, in this, the prohibiting Sharia law, which you're in the, we're going to talk about ban Sharia law, the organization you guys have put together, the great victory of getting prohibiting Sharia law on the ballot in Texas, the 2 million overwhelming support. The fight right now in the state of Texas about this kind of Islamic invasion. But isn't this just a backdoor way to promote your version and Karen's version of Christian nationalism, particularly wrapping yourself, what does Sinclair Lewis say? Your form of fascism is going to be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross, sir?
I don't think so, Steve. I think objectively observed, what we're talking about is preserving the traditions, the values, the civilization that gave birth to the greatest country in the history of the world. And its traditions and roots are clearly with Christianity. The founders were nationalists, make no mistake about it. They were Christians as well as nationalists. And I think what we're talking about is simply trying to make sure that this country, the last best hope of mankind, is not just another victim of the strategy of conquest that I believe is what the Sharia supremacists are working to use to take us down. So it's a question of, do you stand with the Constitution? Does that make you a Christian? Maybe. Does that make you a nationalist? Maybe. But it makes you a patriot. Or do you stand with the idea that people who want to destroy all of that, and make no secret of it, Steve. In fact, that's what our campaign is really all about, is educating people about what is actually the stated and increasingly brazenly championed plan for the Sharia supremacists, namely destroying our Constitution and the government and republic founded upon it, and replacing it with this, this primeval political, military, and I can only say legal strategy for conquest that is to be made the supreme law of the land instead, and create in this country the kind of demonic death cult that is running something like 56 other countries and Palestine elsewhere around the world, and to their great detriment, and now is seeking to do the same to the rest of Western civilization, notably in Western Europe at the moment.
Hang on, before we get into the presentation, let me get Karen here. Karen, American Freedom Alliance, you're the head of, founder of, that used to be a little more, I should say a lot more libertarian, but you guys have segued, I guess, closer to the populist nationalist right. I believe it's because one of the things is the Islamic Islamic revolution globally. But answer my question about Christian nationalism. Is AFA, are you coming wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross, ma'am?
Hardly, Steve. Are we wrapped in the flag? Absolutely. Do we recognize the fundamental nature of our Judeo-Christian heritage that's without which this country would not have been born? That is key. And when you forget that is when you leave the gate wide open for other evil totalitarian ideologies to take root, such as communism, such as the profound leftism that we're living under, at least here in California, and absolutely Islam. So when you knock out the I call them the load-bearing walls, the biblical values that contributed to the creation of this country, the founders absolutely knew. They felt that we were profoundly a Christian nation. They harked to the Hebrew Bible, to the New Testament for everything that they did. They knew how key that ideology was to the creation of this country. It was fundamental to the Declaration of Independence, to the Constitution, to everything that was written subsequently, everything that was said subsequently. They recognized this. So when we at the American Freedom Alliance stand for America, freedom, Western civilization, we have to recognize two things. One is these load-bearing walls and the crucial nature of them. And secondly is the extent to which these totalitarian ideologies like Islam seek to break those down in fascistic ways. We are the counter-fascists. They are the ones who are fascistic. And we need to re-educate people as to the crucial nature of the religious base of this country. That's not to say we're looking to be a theocracy. To the contrary, it's with those ideologies that we get the freedoms that we have. And we need to ensure that we continue to be based on those ideologies, and, as Frank pointed out, the Constitution, rather than having it be supplanted by Sharia law that's going to take root wherever it can. We've seen this throughout Europe, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen here.
By the way, I love that concept, load-bearing walls. This is why we get Karen Siegemund on here. It says there's brilliant insights. Frank Gaffney, the floor is yours. Let's start going through the presentation. If I've got questions, as you know, I won't be shy about jumping in. But I want people to make sure they see these slides, and these slides will be available that people can have after the presentation. They can actually get them themselves, Frank.
They're on the
first off,
.com website.
Ban Sharia. And talk a little bit about the coalition, the organization you've kind of put together, and the coalition, and our initial success, which we wouldn't be able to do without Karen Siegemund and the great team over at Patriot Mobile, starting in late December, January of last year. The monumental success we had. Talk about the success, because victory begets victory. And Amen. Steve Cortez talked in the last hour. We now have to have, and campaigns can't do this. This has to be outside groups. It has to be the War Room. It has to be the Ban Sharia organization, what Steve Cortez is talking about, because this issue about the rise of radical Islam in this country on the 25th anniversary of 9/11 is something that must be addressed. It must be addressed head on. And we have to speak truth to power here. We cannot paper this over, and we can't glaze it over. Frank Gaffney, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Steve. And listen, no story of how this came about would be complete without recognizing both Karen Siegemund's very important role in setting up a primarily fantastic event on the 9th of January in Dallas, Texas, in which you played a starring role, as did Geert Wilders, the great freedom fighter in the Netherlands, as well as did Glenn Beck. And the role that you played there and thereafter, Steve, has been just monumental. And I can't thank you enough, especially for the clarity that you're bringing to the point that we're dealing with communists here for sure, but it's Marxist jihadists that are the real crux of the problem. They are joining forces in ways that we'll talk about in the course of this short presentation. What we've tried to do, building upon what came directly out of that marvelous event, and I can't thank Jenny Story and Glenn Story of Patriot Mobile enough for all that they did for this momentous meeting, a meeting before the event, by the way, and since. It's just been huge. But the catalyst for everything that has followed was the effort that you made, I made, Karen made, others, to come into Texas and help the people there on the matter of the ballot, the primary ballot on the Republican side, culminating in the votes on March 3rd. It was 24 inches long, this ballot, double-sided, and there were 9 propositions before you got to Proposition 10. Fortunately, it just had 5 words. Texas should prohibit Sharia law. And as you said, Steve, thanks in part to the efforts of this bansharia.com sort of motley crew, pickup team, informal coalition, if you will, and countless others who had been working long before this vote, notably our friends John Guandolo and John Bennett and Matt Shea and others like them who've been training people across the great state of Texas about the threat we face from Sharia and the need to resist it in every way we can, legally and hopefully throughout, nonviolently, to save our country. Hence the rise of the name we've given to this campaign, Save Texas, Save America. So let me just go through these 12 slides with you very quickly. The first simply describes what we have built to support this project going forward from that critical first phase, which, as you said, 1.9 million Texans voted in favor of that 5-word proposition. They are by far the largest survey that we've ever had in the United States of America about this idea that we don't want any part of Sharia being insinuated into this country, let alone becoming the supreme law of the land. This first slide, well, we've gotten past that one. Let me just simply say we've built a platform.
Yeah, let's go. Whoa. Hang on. Slow down.
Go back one.
I want to make sure we get. Let's get the slide. I don't want the slides rolling. Denver, follow along. Let's put the first slide up. Don't need to roll it. Just put the first slide up and let's focus on the first slide. So what does the first slide tell us?
The first slide just simply makes the point that this is not just some sort of abstract effort, which it really was in the first go-around. This is fine. I'm just going to say what it said. We've built a machine, an engine, to try to assure that we're getting the kind of information that the public needs out and accessible to them, and do it in an urgent way, because we have a window of opportunity. The clock, as this one says, is ticking. The midterms specifically are, we believe, Steve, a unique and fleeting opportunity to take the basic information that we're making available and translate it into a decisive voting issue by finding, identifying, and supporting people. They don't have to be necessarily Republicans, but anyone who stands with the Constitution and against Sharia is worthy of support if they will promise to act on a mandate that we believe must be given them in the course of these midterms. So we think that the public concern is very high, particularly as we've seen in the state of Texas. And there is political will that is emerging.
Hold on, but let's hang on. Whoa. Let's be blunt. Besides Keith Self and some other folks in Texas and a few others starting the Sharia caucus, what has the House really done, or the Senate done? What if elected official, the Republican Party, isn't the Republican Party co-opted by money from the Middle East and relationships in the Middle East? And, we're sending, we've got this huge war that we're financing, protecting the Gulf Emirates. So they're the biggest funders of Sharia in the United States. We're coming up on the 25th anniversary of 9/11. We've never prosecuted. We've never investigated or prosecuted. Remember, the 42 pages redacted of about the Saudi involvement. So when you say the clock is ticking, what is it? The Republican Party of the Bushes, right? That is that's going to take on the Islamist, sir.
Yeah, as you know, Steve, I've been involved in this since before 9/11, and I've never seen anything remotely like the kind of leadership that we're getting out of some elements within the Republican Party, primarily at this point. Is there a large number of leaders of the party, of prominent figures in it, elected officials and so on, who don't get this? I'm afraid, yes, the answer to that is still there's way too many of them. But what is, I believe, before us, and I'll come to this in a little bit more detail in a moment, is a chance to both make them, well, situationally aware, of course, is the military term for it, of what's actually happening. And this is very evident in the state of Texas, as you know. But also then to be prepared to do something about it. And your point is well taken, Steve. Not enough has been done. I take nothing away from Keith Self or Chip Roy, who've co-founded the Sharia Free America Caucus in the House of Representatives in Washington. I take nothing away from Brent Money and others in the similar caucus in the state of Texas's legislature, or Senator Bob Hall, who has been moving mountains in the Senate. It's still too soon to say they've accomplished a whole lot besides beginning to educate, beginning to pull alongside key members of their respective caucuses. And this is a building block. But what we're talking about today, Steve, is literally the launch of a new platform, a campaign, a movement, I hope, that will support those folks in actually doing things in the next legislative cycles with a mandate from the American people.
I just want people. I want people. So this is going to the American people and say, hey, this is your shot. Get on board, and we're going to drive the political process. Continue on, Frank Gaffney. It's totally clear now.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide. This is foundational, Steve. That Sharia is not a religion. Yeah, as I've said earlier, it is a political, military, legal strategy for conquest. Yes, it has a veneer of pietistic practice to it, but it's fundamentally about power. And what that means in these three categories in particular is horrifying. It starts with the fact that women, their bodily safety, let alone their rights, are, over the side if Sharia is the law of the land. It's horrific. Our fundamental freedoms, Karen spoke about so eloquently, are over the side similarly if Sharia is put into place. There's no freedom of speech. If, God forbid, you say something that is considered by any Muslim to be a blasphemy against their faith, against their prophet, against Allah, you can be killed, period. This is censorship of the worst kind, obviously. And there's no freedom of religion for anybody but Muslims. Let me just say a word about this. Invariably, people say, well, I know good Muslims. They're nice, and they love our country, and they've served in our military and the like. I'm not suggesting that that's not true. To the contrary, our movement is about empowering such people. But the trouble is, those that we call good Muslims, well, there's another name for them. For the vast majority of the Muslim world and all of their authorities, they call them apostates. And the trouble with being an apostate in this death cult of Sharia is that gets you killed too. So generally speaking, we're not hearing a whole lot from those good Muslims. They're keeping their heads down lest they be losing them. Equal justice under the law, a foundational principle, again, of our constitutional republic. That's over the side because only Muslims really have rights. If you're Christians and Jews, you may not be killed outright, but you will be forced to choose between converting or serving in a sort of enslaved state, paying taxes, the jizya, to your overlords, your masters, the Muslims, or you can choose to be killed too. I mean, they do have that on offer as well. But this is not anything remotely like the America that we love, and it must not be allowed to be present and governing in this country. So let me tell you a little bit more about some of the impacts of Sharia on women, because, there's some women who are being encouraged to believe that, the hijab could be a fashion statement, or maybe even, try on the burqa. It's not so bad. It's just covering you, and it avoids you being raped by Muslims if they have an opportunity to do so, that you're covered. So here's just a couple of key facts. Women, as I said, lose bodily safety right out of the gate. Karen has spent time with our friend and colleague, Tommy Robinson, who's done tremendous work helping to expose what's been going on in Britain in terms of, in terms of the rape gangs that have been operating there for at least 50 years, some say 70, afflicting, by some conservative estimates, 250,000 British girls and women, and maybe as many as 1 million, according to Tommy. That's the kind of thing that gets done under Sharia. Sexual and physical abuse is not only permissible, it is condoned and in some cases considered obligatory. You don't have equal rights, that's for sure. A man can say, I divorce you by simply, get divorced by simply saying 3 times, I divorce you. Your children can be taken away from you because he's got rights and you don't. It goes downhill from there. Women, as I said, are obliged to cover their bodies, sometimes in whole, sometimes in part. But either way, it's all about their submission to the man. And in some societies, they're not allowed to do anything, notably in Afghanistan. can't even go outside without a man, and even then it's not all that encouraged. And then there's this particularly heinous feature that, like so much of this, is a function of how the so-called perfect man, namely Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, conducted himself. What he thought, what he said, what he ordered his followers to emulate. He married Aisha at age 6 and began raping her at age 9. That is a model that it is perfectly acceptable, indeed encouraged, for Muslim men to engage in. Is it abhorrent? Is it uncivilized? Is it appalling? You bet. All of those things. But it's part of what the perfect man did, and therefore it is part of what is allowed, encouraged.
Hey Frank,
condoned,
we've got to hang on.
Obligatory in some cases.
Hang on. We have a commercial. We have a commercial break we have to go to. I just want to make sure everybody knows when you go to these things, you have this all documented. Obviously, this is all in the biographies and the histories, but you have all this documented so people can go right through there and just understand this is not Frank Gaffney making this up. This all comes from well-documented sources, correct?
Absolutely. And one of them, Steve, which we did back in 2010, is this book called Sharia, the Threat to America. It's available for free as a PDF at the Center for Security Policy's website. I commend you. Get it, read it, internalize it, and act on it. It's got all the documentation you would want and more. There's also this little booklet, The Secret Plan of the Muslim Brotherhood to Destroy Western Civilization from within, called the Explanatory Memorandum, also available at the Center for Security Policy for free.
Short commercial break. Going to return in a moment.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, Frank, I want to kind of pick up the pace here because I got 8 more slides. I want everybody to see the presentation, understand it holistically, and then we're going to be able to go to the site and pick it up because this is kind of the kickoff. And you've got all kind of videos. You have all kind of other presentation material people can go see. But let's go ahead and let it rip. I think we got about 7 or 8 more slides to go.
Very quickly. This one on the 1.9 million we've covered. I just would like to do a shout out to Scott Rasmussen, who's done some very good polling on this. And he found about a year ago, I think, that something on the order of 77% of those voters he polled believe that there's reason for concern about radical Islam in America. Next slide. So the point here is, next slide, please, Denver. We talk a little bit about this engine that we've built to get stuff done, Steve, including populating that website. It's very impressive. Lots of good content, as you say, but also the capacity to produce a lot more. And that's what we're about with this campaign. Next slide. Next slide. This one simply talks about how we are working to use this production capability to produce more videos. In particular, they're designed to be very accessible, 90 seconds to 2.5 minutes long, mostly. We also have some very good webinars and other content. But what we're really keen on is information operations, offensive in character. Not meaning offending people, but not simply hunkering down and trying to protect our country from what is increasingly evident in terms of the aggression of these Sharia supremacist enemies. Next slide. We have and I'm looking forward to having Kimberly Fletcher from Moms for America on tomorrow, Steve, as one of the exemplars of the kind of grassroots organizations that care passionately about this country and do hugely important work on it, who are pulling in behind this effort as part of what we call the BanSharia.com campaign. These partners are incalculably important, especially as they help us disseminate the kind of information that we're generating. And then we've got a whole bunch of things that we're working on with influencers and educating legislators and using open source intelligence and training, all tools that are essential to carrying this fight forward and doing so decisively. And then the last two really critical slides are the 6 lines of effort that we've identified so far. We are in the process of building out this campaign. As I say, we're launching it literally today in terms of its second phase. The third phase will be after the midterm elections and trying to make sure that people actually do what they promised to do and are held accountable for it. Let me go through these 6 lines of effort very quickly. First, we talked a little bit about this already. Sharia is not a religion. People say Islam is a religion. Okay, but the bulk of it is Sharia, and that is about power, not about faith. And it has to be recognized as such because the power that they seek is toxic and will destroy our country if not checked. It does not deserve, nor should it have, the protections of the First Amendment under religious freedom because it doesn't qualify. That's a proposition we will be educating intensively about. Secondly, we want to identify where candidates for every office in every state at every level across this country stand with respect to this fundamental proposition. Will you faithfully take the oath of office that in one form or another says you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic? And if you cannot honestly, truthfully, reliably take that oath, you don't have any business running for office. For that matter, you don't have any business being a citizen, a naturalized citizen of our country, because that oath is even more demanding. But this is where a lot of people are going to go sideways on us, Steve, including, I'm afraid, some Republican squishes who don't think that they need to actually be this forthright. Maybe they're afraid that they'll alienate Muslim voters or not get contributions from certain rich Muslims. We need to know, because on the first grounds, they should be considered ineligible if they can't take the oath of office honestly and so on. And secondly, if they've already falsely declared that oath and are in office, they ought to be removed because that's perjury if they're Sharia supremacists. And for that matter, Marxists as well, because they're all about destroying our Constitution. Thirdly, Governor Greg Abbott, to his credit, and going back to what you asked earlier about Republicans and, are they part of the problem? I would say that Greg Abbott deserves enormous credit for having back in November, I think it was the 18th of last year, designated the Muslim Brotherhood, the outfit that put this explanatory memorandum, which explicitly calls for destroying Western civilization from within, and its pit bull front group, the Council on American Islamic Relations, better known by its acronym CARE, on the list of designated terrorist organizations and, as it happens, also transnational criminal organizations. Now, to your question, has much been done to implement that? No, sadly not. CARE is still running around all over Texas. It's testifying before official commissions like our friend Julie Pickering's and Brandon Hall's State Board of Education, campaigning for more mosques to be built in places like McKinney, and otherwise trying inexorably to advance the Sharia agenda. That must stop. One of the things that the governor said in his declaration is these groups, the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE, cannot own real property in the state of Texas. seems to me a good place to start is by shutting down the mosques that they own. And by the way, one of the things that we're really focused on, Steve, is the fact, as you've and I've been talking about, these mosques are not houses of worship, certainly not exclusively. From the time of Muhammad, the perfect man, forward, they have been multi-use facilities, including arsenals and places where people train and plot for the use of weapons. That's not tolerable in this country because that's essentially the critical infrastructure of jihad aimed at achieving Sharia's goal of taking down our country. So we want the governor to enforce that. I would suggest, even just as a starting point, how about this? Impose a moratorium on the further construction of any further mosques. There are plenty of them, something like the order of 300 of them in the state of Texas alone. And by some estimates, there were 48 that were constructed or issued or began operating in the past 24 months in the state of Texas. This is outrageous, especially as it does constitute the critical infrastructure of jihad. Fourth, as we've talked about it already, actually, I don't have to belabor the point. Sharia adherent Muslims cannot faithfully take the oath of office. And fraud, in this case, should be disqualifying. If it's already been perpetrated, it's perjury. They should be booted. Fifth, a hugely important example of what this all means if it is allowed to run its course.
So hang on, Frank. Hang on. We had this issue. The McKinney team was on yesterday. And this is very much specifically tied to H-1B visas, but really the growth of the Islamic infrastructure, including these huge centers in McKinney, Texas. One of the things the guys told me in the presentation, the leader said, hey, look, we're trying to kind of shame or put on notice a Republican Party that has a mentality that as long as your money's green, it's fine. What do you say to that? I know we just got one more slide to go, but the explosive growth in Texas of 300 mosques already, and I think another 100 that are planned and I think kind of even approved, is this mentality on our side of the football that, yeah, Gaffney, these guys have a problem with it, but there's really no problem as long as we get economic growth, GDP growth in these communities. Your response, what would the Ban Sharia organization say to that?
Well, as we talk about on any number of subjects, including China, Steve, it often is the case that there are enemies within who maybe they're just venal and corrupt, but maybe they really don't care about the country that you have to reckon with. And that's true in this case, I believe, as well. I would say this, to the extent that people don't understand the nature of a mosque, it's easier for them to kind of rationalize this. It's just business. And, I can sell them the property and maybe I can do the construction and so on. If you understand it as a forward operating base for jihad, you have a duty, especially if you're sitting on a city council, for heaven's sakes, to protect your constituents from what will emanate from that mosque. And maybe it's not full-on violent jihad at the get-go. Maybe it's just the civilization jihad kind of which the Muslim Brotherhood speaks. But Steve, you're absolutely right. They're part of the problem. They need to be exposed. If I may, your first book in the War Room series was The Indictment. It was all about going after the people who are enabling these enemies by doing business and getting rich and otherwise selling us out. It has to stop in this case too. Last item on this slide, and we're done basically, is training. I mentioned it earlier. I think it's made all the difference in why Texas is so riled up about this. Yes, part of it's what's happening. They're witnessing what's taking place around them, but many of them, thanks to these wonderful trainers who are part of our team, they are more clued up about what's going on than most other Americans are. We need to fix that by taking this educational effort countrywide. So finally, phase 2 is, as I mentioned, about a midterm blitz. We want to make use of these God-given 3 months or so before the midterms to try to awaken the American people and to try to use the midterm convention that will be taking place in Dallas in the middle of this next month to help get national buy-in to the idea that we have to prevent Sharia from taking hold further. We have to ban it, and it needs to be a voting issue, a decisive voting issue this fall. Phase 3, please God, we will have wild success at the polls because I believe there are independents, yes, and probably even still some Democrats who will be all in for trying to protect our country if they know there is an effective alternative being mounted by our bansharia.com campaign. I just want to say there's a lot more that is going to be on social media platforms at ban.sharia. I hope people will check it out, as well as the website bansharia.com. Thank you, Steve.
You're 100%. One more time, where do people go? You got videos, you got training, you got much more in depth, you got articles, you have all the references. So everything Frank said about Sharia, Islam is all documented. When you go to these sites, I want to make sure everybody's grounded in this. So where do people go one more time, Frank?
The one-stop shop really is bansharia.com. This book is sort of, in brief, made available there. Sharia, the Threat to America. We have a series of webinars that we've done with our bansharia.com team. We've got coalition partners that are pulling in behind them. Our simple ask to them is just help us expose their members to what is going on here and what we must do about it. And all of that is accessible, as will be on the social media platforms this evening, at ban.sharia and then bansharia.com.
Frank, fantastic. Karen, we got about 2 minutes. AFA's position in this. What are you guys working on to help the Ban Sharia Coalition?
Well, I've been part of the absolutely remarkable series of webinars that Frank and bansharia.com have been hosting. They bring in experts on all facets of everything that Frank has been talking about. And just to chime in on what he said, every single aspect that he covered in those slides is completely counter to our belief system, our philosophical underpinnings, everything that makes us the country that we are, the greatest country in the history of the world. We don't need to guess at how this all might play out. All we have to do is look at Europe. There's no guessing going on. We're losing, as you mentioned, London, Paris, all the great cities. We're losing Western civilization. So everything that I've been trying to do as well with the American Freedom Alliance, we've hosted events. We were part of the January 9th event that you were so instrumental in, educating people as to the effects of this. And they are the community, the Islamic community, the Sharia totalitarian community has been way ahead of the curve, way ahead of us in terms of undermining all that we are and all that we believe. We're seeing this. It's very aggressive. We've talked about unrestricted warfare in regard to communism. I think there's the same very analogous process with jihad. It can be civilizational even before it's violent. So people have to understand that this is an ideology that seeks conquest. So whatever I can do, whatever the American Freedom Alliance can do, which is events, participating in webinars, and contributing to this fight, because we do not want to go down the path that we see Europe going down.
A major, and you're getting Gert Wilders was one of the great initiations of this entire project. You two are very close to Dr. Thayer. We have great news today. We're going to close the show out with Dr. Thayer about huge news for his new book. However, I want to play something that all three of our participants can appreciate from the Democratic Socialist Party. Let's go ahead and play one of their top people, what he has to say about the American Constitution.
Goal. So the two things that we're famous for is our commitment to a program and our hatred of the United States Constitution. And what the program does is it gives us a roadmap to revolution, and it gives us the obstacle that we finally will have to get over to have a revolution, which is the United States Constitution, the basis of the United States government. And what the minimum maximum program specifically, what that format specifically gives us is that roadmap. It gives us the minimum circumstances under which we would be able to take power and govern, and it gives us the maximum program, which is the goals that we're actually aiming for. It also clarifies democracy as both the end goal and as part of the process to get there, ensures the internal party democracy that we want to see in DSA. So it really wraps up the revolutionary tradition of democracy that I think socialism and abolitionism in the United States have always been a part of, and aims it, at a future that we can live in as a human species. Because I think absent a revolutionary democratic socialist republic in North America, we may not have a livable future.
A democratic socialist republic of North America. Dr. Bradley Thayer, you are now on the side of the Marxist side of the equation. We've had the jihadists. I got a couple of minutes. Tell me that, and by the way, we're going to take it out with Bruce Springsteen, Streets of Minneapolis, the Democratic Socialist Republic of North America's theme song. Dr. Thayer, tell us about the success of the book on day one, sir.
Well, Steve, it's remarkable. Thanks to the audience and all of your support for the book. It's already characterized as #1 in some categories at Amazon and doing really well across all categories. So the book, America's 100 Years War, How to Win Against Communism, is off to a great start today, even only after hours since it's been shipped. Obviously the attention that you've given to it and all of these issues really demonstrate we're in the midst of a revolution. It's a revolutionary time in the U.S. between communist tyranny and the hope of sustaining the United States as a constitutional republic. Everybody's got to get into this fight now, that is right now, in any way that they can, to ensure that things go our way, not only in the midterms, but obviously in the next presidential election. But
Yes.
the midterms are absolutely essential, because that's laying a foundation stone for what's going to be happening in 28. So, Steve, thanks so much for your support.
No. This book, this is how important, and at the timing, you've worked on this for over a year. It's #1 in new releases, I think. Come on, folks. Go to Amazon right now. Where should they go? What's the title of the book? How should they get it, Dr. Thayer?
America's 100 Years War, How to Win Against Communism. President Trump is obviously calling attention to the great danger of communism, and folks can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and you can follow me at Brad Thayer on X or Bradley Thayer Getter and Truth. Thank you, Steve, and thanks to the audience.
Thank you, brother. Birchgold.com. Find out how we save maybe the king dollar, right? Go to birchgold.com/Bannon. Enter the dollar empire. We don't want it. Not unless you have a national debate. We make a national decision that we don't want to be the prime reserve currency. I think we may be a little beyond that, since we got to refinance 1/3 of $40 trillion of national debt. Bank of America says it's going to be $50 trillion in 3 years. Find out what that means for your prosperity, your country's prosperity, and the survival of your family. Birchgold.com/Bannon. Enter the dollar empire. Everything is free. There's no obligation. You get to talk to Philip Patron team, who will join me on Thursday. Tomorrow, we've got the Mass Deportation Coalition. Mike Howell's going to join us. I got Eric Boeing. We'll talk about capital markets. Dr. Peter Navarro. We're already packed in the morning show. I want to thank Frank Gaffney. Frank, real quickly, where do they go for Ban Sharia? I got 30 seconds.
BanSharia.com is the website. Ban.Sharia is going to be the social media platform on all platforms.
Thank you, brother. Great presentation. Karen Siegemund, always enjoy your efforts. That brilliant. Load-bearing walls. I'm stealing that, Karen. I'm going to use that as homage to you. I love that. Come back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, when you will be back in the war room.